strong evidence that God exists. Strong evidence that God exists. Strong evidence that God exists. Today I'm going to give a lecture about theism versus atheism. But since I went through doubts about God and Christianity and the divine principle, and how I discovered that there are good reasons to believe in God, so I want to share that there is strong evidence that God exists. And I will not be going over like Christianity or the divine principle today, but only about God. Does God exist? And is it the best explanation that we have? When I first made this presentation, I showed it to the king, and he said that if you don't erase 70% of it, people would be asleep. So this is a simplified version. So let's be thankful to the second king that we don't have a 6-hour lecture. So let's get started. So theism versus atheism. Is there rational justification for belief in God? So there are three main belief systems in regards to if God exists over the universe. First, it's atheism. So atheism is the claim that God does not exist. This is a truth claim, and therefore it has to be supported with evidence or arguments for its worldview. Next, it's agnosticism, which says that one is not really sure whether one worldview is right over another. So many people think they're atheists, but actually fall into the agnostic camp. Finally, what I'll be arguing today is, of course, theism, which is the claim that there exists a God. Popular culture portrays religion, or more specifically, theism, as an irrational caveman and desert dweller belief. So what I'll argue in this presentation is that theism has more explanatory power based on the available data that we do have. The overview is that we're going to first argue that the universe began to exist. And the three reasons that I'll give for the universe beginning to exist is that the philosophical argument of the impossibility of infinite past events. Next is the scientific arguments of expansion of the universe. And then thirdly, the second law of thermodynamics. And then the second argument that we'll go over is the fine-tuning argument, which says that the design in the universe is incomprehensible if not for a designer. And the third is the moral argument. So I want to note that there are literally hundreds of arguments for classical theism. This is an introduction to the very tip of the iceberg, so to speak. And I want to emphasize this again. I will not be presenting arguments for Christianity or the divine principle. It's only for God's existence. So the first argument is the philosophical, that there can't be an infinite regress of temporal events. So atheists claim that the universe was infinite in nature, and that there is no real beginning point for the universe. But this argument is to prove that that's impossible, because for there to be an infinite universe to exist beforehand, there would have to be an infinite number of past events. And that would never make it so that we would arrive today. So we can watch a video to further illustrate that.
Event after another. It's like a sequence of dominoes, falling one after another until the last domino, today, is reached. The problem is that the final domino could never fall if an infinite number of dominoes had to fall first. So today could never be reached. But obviously, here we are. It's today. So the number of events leading up to today could not possibly be infinite.
So to further clarify this further, I'll try to explain this. So if there was an infinite number of past events before today, so for example, if I was closing and shutting this computer for eternity before today, the number of temporal events would mean that I can never come to today where we are. But obviously here we are. So as the video says, the number of events leading up to today could not possibly be infinite. In other words, the universe was finite in nature, not infinite. So next, let's look at some scientific arguments for the beginning of the universe. In 1929, Edwin Hubble found that the light coming from us from distant galaxies appeared to be redder than expected. This redshift in the light was most plausibly explained because the galaxies are moving away from us, and therefore the wavelengths are stretched so that they appear to be redder than expected. And wherever Hubble trained his telescope in the night sky, he observed this same redshift in the light over and over again. It appears as though we are in the middle of a cosmic explosion, and that all other galaxies are flying away from us at tremendous speeds. And if we were to rewind the tape, it would shrink down to an initial singularity. So that would mean that the universe had a beginning. So we can understand this through an example of a balloon. And do you have the balloon? So the balloon is supposed to represent the universe expanding, and then the breath into the and then the breath of the blowing into the balloon is supposed to represent that the universe is expanding from nothing. And the stickers represent the galaxies and the universe and whatnot. So as you can see, the universes are expanding, and the galaxies are spreading farther away from each other. And this is an example of the first scientific confirmation that the universe is expanding. So the second scientific argument for the beginning of the universe, which is the second law of thermodynamics. The second law of thermodynamics states that unless energy is being fed into a system, that system will become increasingly disorderly. Given enough time, all of the energy in the universe will eventually spread out evenly throughout the universe. You may have heard of this, but it is called the heat death of the universe, which will mean that there will be no such thing as heat anymore, leaving the entire universe in bitter cold darkness. And this prediction of the future raised a further puzzle. If given enough time that the universe will eventually be in a state of heat death, then why, if it has existed forever, why is it not now in a state of heat death? So for example, I'm sure you have heard that the sun will cease to give its heat eventually. And the sun's death is calculated to be about 7 to 8 billion years from now. However, if there was an infinite amount of time that had passed before we arrived today, then the sun would have already died a long time ago. But the sun is still here, giving off its light. That would mean that the universe was not past eternal. So I'll try to explain this again. So the sun is finite in nature of time. However, the atheist claim is that the universe existed forever and that it is a necessary existence. However, if the sun is finite in nature, if the universe has existed forever, then the sun would have already died by now. So therefore, the universe had a beginning. So now that we have established that the universe began to exist, what could cause a universe to come into being?